identity migrations rarely fail because of the identity platform alone. They're shaped by applications, servers, and legacy dependencies like Kerberos, LDAP, and domain join. In this module, we'll use those patterns to decide when cloud first is realistic and when hybrid is required. Up to this point, we've built the foundation: Active Directory fundamentals, Entra ID concepts, and target state migration choices. Now we move from ideal architecture into real-world constraints. Applications, servers, LDAP, service accounts, Kerberos, and other legacy dependencies often determine what can migrate, what must stay hybrid, and what risks need planning next. Migration architecture is not just an identity decision. It is a workload decision. Applications may expect LDAP, Kerberos, NTLM, domain join machines, group policy, or Windows integrated authentication. Servers may depend on nearby domain controllers, file shares, databases, and line of business systems. These requirements can force a hybrid model even when the long-term goal is cloud-only identity. The practical approach is to map dependencies first, then choose the migration pattern. Some workloads can move quickly to Entra ID. Others need phased coexistence until legacy constraints are removed. Before choosing a migration pattern, build a dependency inventory that is specific enough to prevent surprises. Capture each application, server, service account, authentication method, network path, and data connection. Then classify the workload: cloud-ready, hybrid-dependent, legacy-bound, or a candidate to retire. Add business criticality and technical complexity, because those factors drive sequencing and risk. Finally, record ownership, vendor support, maintenance windows, and known constraints. This turns migration planning from guesswork into an evidence-based decision about what moves first, what needs remediation, and what should not move at all. Many legacy apps are tightly coupled to Active Directory because they bind directly to domain controllers over LDAP or LDAPS. That bind may be doing more than login. The app might read group membership, pull user attributes, or make authorization decisions from directory data. If those calls disappear, the application can break even after users have moved to modern identity. During migration, identify every bind, especially simple or unencrypted LDAP. Then decide the path forward. Update the app for SAML, OAuth, or OpenID Connect, or place a transitional directory service in between. Service accounts are often the part of Active Directory no one wants to touch, because something critical might break. They run app pools, scheduled tasks, Windows services, database jobs, and vendor integrations. The problem is that these accounts often have old passwords, broad privileges, and no clear owner. During migration, inventory where each account is used, what it can access, and how credentials are stored or rotated. From there, decide whether to keep it temporarily, reduce its permissions, or replace it with managed identities, workload identities, certificates, or a cleaner, least privileged design. Integrated Windows authentication is where many AD migrations get complicated. Kerberos works well for domain-joined experiences, but it depends on domain controllers, SPNs, DNS, timesync, and trusts. NTLM is usually a legacy signal, often found in older apps, devices, or unmanaged configurations. It also raises both security and migration risk. Entra ID can modernize authentication, but it does not simply replace every Kerberos or NTLM dependency. Each application needs a decision: modernize it, publish it through an application proxy pattern, use Entra domain services, or keep AD available. Configuration debt is the wiring behind the walls. Everything may work today because scripts, apps, and servers quietly point to old domain names, LDAP paths, UNC shares, NetBIOS names, or service accounts. During migration, those hidden assumptions can snap. A script may target a specific OU. An app may bind to a legacy distinguished name. A service may depend on an old file share. Discovery has to go beyond directory objects. Search repositories, automation, configuration management, registries, connection strings, and server settings before you cut over. Vendor support can be the hidden constraint in an identity migration. Imagine a finance application that still requires AD groups, LDAP, Kerberos, and domain-joined Windows servers. You might prove a cloud workaround in testing, but the vendor may still call it unsupported. that changes the risk profile. During an outage, you may lose escalation rights, audit confidence, or compliance coverage. The decision is not just technical. Teams need to confirm supported authentication methods, operating systems, roadmaps, and upgrade paths early. Then choose whether to keep hybrid, upgrade, replace, or isolate until retirement. Server location is not just a hosting decision. It shapes identity, latency, recovery, network design, and cost. On-premises servers still make sense when equipment, legacy apps, file access, or regulations require local control. Azure virtual machines are often a bridge. You can modernize infrastructure while keeping familiar Windows Server and Active Directory patterns. A no data center model goes further, replacing servers with SaaS, PaaS, cloud storage, and endpoint management. The best choice depends on dependencies, operational maturity, connectivity, and how quickly each workload can be retired or redesigned. Network connectivity becomes a dependency, not just plumbing, when identities and applications span on-premises and Azure. A site-to-site VPN can work well for smaller environments, pilots, or temporary migration traffic. When performance, private routing, or scale matter, ExpressRoute is often the better design choice. Also remember that moving an app to Azure does not automatically remove its on-premises dependencies. It may still need databases, file shares, domain controllers, DNS, and management tools. Validate latency, routing, firewall rules, resiliency, and monitoring before you cut over production workloads. Microsoft Entra Domain Services is useful when a cloud workload still expects traditional domain behavior. Instead of deploying and patching domain controllers, Microsoft provides a managed domain that can support domain join, LDAP, Kerberos, and NTLM for Azure-hosted applications. The important distinction is scope. This is not a full Active Directory replacement, and you do not get the same administrative control as on-premises ADDS. Treat it as a bridge. Keep legacy workloads running while you modernize identity, reduce dependencies, and move toward Entra-native authentication. Application modernization is the cleanest long-term way to reduce Active Directory dependency. Instead of keeping apps tied to LDAP, NTLM, or Kerberos, you move them to standards like SAML, OpenID Connect, OAuth 2.0, or the Microsoft Identity Platform. That shift unlocks conditional access, MFA, risk-based controls, and centralized governance in Entra ID. The trade-off is effort. You still need to discover dependencies, assess protocols, choose a pattern, pilot carefully, and then enforce policies. Prioritize this path for strategic, business-critical apps that will be around for years. Modernization is not the default answer for every legacy app. Start by asking whether the business capability still matters and whether a standard SaaS product can provide it with less operational burden. If usage is low, duplicated, or unsupported, plan a phased retirement instead of rebuilding. Some systems need temporary isolation, while owners validate replacement workflows and dependencies are unwound. The roadmap should sequence decisions by value, risk, complexity, and readiness. That turns application assessment into an executable migration plan, with quick wins first and high-risk legacy systems handled deliberately. The main lesson is to design for reality. Before moving identity services, uncover LDAP Kerberos, NTLM, service accounts, hard-coded domains, and vendor limits. Then choose where each workload belongs: on-premises, Azure, SaaS, or retired. Transitional patterns can reduce risk while legacy constraints are removed. Next, we turn these architecture choices into migration plans with rollback, governance, and decision gates.